Hi everyone, and welcome to StudioJake Movie Makeover Masterpiece. On this podcast, we take a film that on paper should have been good. Maybe it had a dynamite director, an awesome cast, the trailer just dazzled you, but when you saw it, whether at home or in the theater or you saw it through a streaming service, whatever the case may be, you were like, where did this go wrong? Myself and a special guest, we're going to be talking about these movies, where they went wrong, and how we can fix them. So sit back, relax, and welcome to StudioJake Movie Makeover Masterpiece. The finale of 20th Century Fox original mutant trilogy, X-Men: The Last Stand, had a turbulent start, with two directors passing on it before the film landed in the lap of director Brett Ratner. With most of the principal cast returning, a major budget, and lots of Wolverine action, this movie was slated to be a success. Unfortunately, it was not. X3 was criticized for killing off iconic characters, a disjointed plot, and for its poor adaptation of the classic X-Men story arc, Dark Phoenix. Joining me today is my friend Rosemary Dewar. Together we will break down the faults in this film and discuss how to fix it. As usual, spoiler alert. Rosemary, how do we fix X-Men: The Last Stand?
Let me count the ways. There are several things from how they chose to class the mutants to how small they decided to actually make the Phoenix energy to so many other things that we can change here.
Yes, it's. I always thought that was. I don't know exactly where this whole the Phoenix is just an evolution of Jean's powers started, where it's like another personality. I don't know if that's like a thing from the Ultimate Comics, because I stopped reading the Ultimate Comic X-Men after their ridiculous Weapon X saga. But so I don't know where that came from, but I honestly think it was just because they were looking for a way to just low-key it a little bit. But I don't know, and there's just so many configurations. Like, I also don't feel like it flows good from X2 X-Men United. Like, I felt like it's just kind of like, bam, here's the third movie. What do you think? Because the first X-Men was really good at setting up the second one. And of course, we all know Bryan Singer, he defected. He was supposed to do this film, but he defected to do Superman Returns, which that was a terrible movie. So I'm curious, what do you think? Where do you think that the missteps were as far as the story goes?
I think starting it into the introduction to 8-year-old, 12-year-old Jean Grey was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
In the fact of trying to say how powerful she was at the very beginning. Instead of like all the other mutants, they all have to learn, but Jean Grey doesn't have to, which doesn't make sense. So it loses a sense of reality and continuity there. And then the Phoenix power is aloof. You don't know where it comes from. If the Phoenix was that strong in a tween, the world would be over. Like, there's no self-control there. There's no way she would have the amount of maturity or wherewithal to contain something like that. Even with some of the characters that they choose to eventually kill off, literally makes the last stand the last stand. There's nowhere to go with the series with any of the other characters because they're either devolved or gone. And one of the things that they tried to use as a main sense of tension within the film is the cure for the mutation, for the evolution. And again, with the Dark Phoenix power, when you have a whole bunch of in the comic book, a whole bunch of mutants actually lose their powers, and then the Dark Phoenix reconstitutes them with those powers. But again, the story does not allow for any of that to occur. and Magneto is too big. His character is big in the film, and it gets to the point where if the Phoenix power was big enough, Magneto and Xavier would have been on the same team again, and then honestly, the Beast's diplomatic power would have been more useful with the United Nations and the President of the United States in the movie in order to come together and actually have that type of unity that they've been fighting for in the first film and the second film. So yeah, that's some more things.
Right, and also too, I felt like why would you assume that once Jean Grey got her abilities, she would just go to Magneto? Like, and they kind of make that assumption in Dark Phoenix as well, but you know, that's a different podcast. But I just mean they just assume that because she feels like Professor X betrayed her, she would just automatically go to Magneto. I mean, why would they just assume that? Because to me, like you said in the comic books, Phoenix is given a very specific set of powers. She's got Jean Grey's mutant powers that the Phoenix enhances. She can control like a telepathic flame, I guess, and also she has super strength. She's in the comics, they wouldn't let her fight Thor. I guess the original writer of the Dark Phoenix saga, he wanted her to fight Thor and win, but the CEO of Marvel at the time thought that was a bad idea, and it would look gimmicky, and so they made it where she fought a villain who had defeated Thor, and she beat him, and so she has super strength as well, and so it's very limiting in her abilities. But like you said, like the scene where she's just like vaporizing people with her mind, I'm like, that's not even present in the comic book. So it's like, what is the Phoenix? Is it just this ethereal thing that's just gives her whatever power she wants? Like, it didn't make sense, and I didn't feel, and like why, and like she just kind of has them suddenly. Like, they try to give a little bit of a backstory, but you would think those abilities would kind of surface in the first two X-Men films, and I guess they imply that they do in X2, but it wasn't really enough. There wasn't enough of a build-up. At least I felt that way story-wise. What do you think?
Yes, I don't. Again, it's like the Phoenix is not given its own personality,
right,
where everything is too fused together. And I think when it comes, if you guys have a chance, go ahead and go watch the review that we did with Dark Phoenix and some of the predictions that we had with that. But it is pure power. It is pure will, pure passion, and someone with the selfish mentality that Magneto has. I could see the Phoenix kind of gravitating towards something like that.
That's
so I think that was something that was semi well written in. I don't think it was well planned, but I think it was something that is congruent to the storytelling. But again, it's like Magneto is too big, and getting, it's like Mystique ends up losing her powers entirely, which is a mistake.
right.
Cyclops is dead at the beginning, which is also a mistake. It's like the way that they chose to write it didn't allow for like Deadpool to happen in the future. It gets rid of Cable. It gets rid of. It really kind of puts a damper on the Essex Corporation and their plans to do some things. It just it cuts everything off at the knees, and you're like, why would you do that? It makes it very hard. I mean, it makes it very difficult for Wolverine to move forward into moving into the MCU, getting introduced to the Avengers and actually becoming a part of them for a while. It doesn't allow enough character development to happen to the point where the X-Men don't have leadership. On top of which, in the first film and in the second film, they minimize Storm so much that she's just a beautiful sidekick. And I'm like, so disappointing. Disappointing. And I don't blame Halle Berry for it. I blame the writers. It's like They should know these things. There's plenty of geeks out there that know enough about these storylines to make it compelling, and they failed. So, killing Xavier, mistake. Killing Cyclops. It's like, there goes your leadership. Like, you can't go into the MCU if both of those guys are gone.
Well, but don't forget, this is before Fox was being acquisitioned by Disney, so they probably weren't thinking that far in advance. I don't know. Unless the Fantastic Four X-Men theory was still around or was developed back then. 'Cause for a while, I think they thought that the Fantastic Four remake that was awful, the one that had Kate Mara, I think they thought that one was going to cross over with the new X-Men with the new cast and everything. But I don't know if they were thinking MCU. But you think they were? That's curious. I've never heard that theory before.
I mean, I don't think they were necessarily thinking about it. I think their vision was too small, to the point that they, and again, it's like they have milked Hugh Jackman for all he's worth,
right.
and they've messed up introducing a new actor to become Wolverine.
Yes.
It's like using him back in World War II, mistake. Then using him again in the future as Logan, mistake. And The Last Stand, it does throw a wrench into what they were trying to regain with Days of Future Past.
I agree with you. One of the things too I don't like about The Last Stand is it started this, Xavier is more of a gray character than he is the good-hearted man we thought he was. And because we see that kind of repeated in X-Men Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, and especially in Logan. And I don't like that about it. I guess because I grew up with the 90s and the early 2000s Professor X, the one in X-Men, the animated series, and X-Men Evolution. I'm used to that Professor X. And so I get it that if they want to do this thing where Xavier made a mistake, but it was like this ongoing thing that they just couldn't latch onto. And I don't like that. What do you agree? Do you agree or disagree with that?
No, I agree. He was not faulty enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like there needed to be enough mistakes that he made that mattered.
Right.
And that not only mistakes that matter, but ones that he was soon able to redeem.
Right.
Some way. It was a loss of tension for the character, and it made him 2D. It made him very, very two-dimensional. But yeah, there's quite a few things that went severe. It's like, even down to the composer, the music is not. It doesn't build tension with the dialogue.
Right.
It's more like when something explodes, you have a little bit of horn, a little bit of tension string, and that's it. There's not. I really don't think music became compelling again until Batman Returns.
Right.
So, or Batman Begins. So, there's several missteps that happens throughout the film, and at the time you can probably definitely say that they were not thinking forward at all until someone else bought the rights to it.
And this is a good point. And this is a perfect transition into this next section where we talk about the directing of the film. And I actually kind of feel bad for Brett Ratner because I think for what he does, his style, I think he's good at his style. I think I actually am, as far as with Rush Hour, or I should say the Rush Hour trilogy, and with Tower Heist, I actually enjoy those films a great deal. And also, I even kind of liked his Hercules remake with Dwayne Johnson. I know that's kind of an unpopular opinion, but to be clear, I'm not saying it's The Godfather. I'm just saying I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. But I honestly feel like with him, he was kind of given a script that was originally meant for Bryan Singer to direct, and then Bryan Singer left to do Superman Returns, and so then Matthew Vaughn, who actually went on to direct a different X-Men movie, I believe First Class, Matthew Vaughn was supposed to direct Last Stand, and then he passed on it to do a different film, so then it ended up in Brett Ratner's hands. And a lot of times with those kind of third pick directors, they don't have time to put their own style to it. And this is a big complaint I have with Nolan's film Interstellar. It was originally meant to be a Steven Spielberg film, and then when Nolan got the script, he and his brother rewrote it, but Warner Brothers wanted it made right now, and so they weren't able to like put their own little tweaks to it. So do you agree with me on that? Like, I really think it was more of a writing problem with the movie. I don't think, because I like Brett Ratner. What do you think?
No, I completely agree. It does feel like there are two visions going on at the same time, where it was meant for someone else, and someone else tried to project their own vision on it, and it was another misstep for the presentation of that film. But even if Brian Ratner wasn't able to continue it, there are other directors that I think would have been helpful. I'm trying to think. Who is the director for Mission Impossible 2? I can't remember. But I feel
Mission Impossible 2. That was the Newsboys. Actually, the Newsboys of all bands. John Woo.
Yeah. So the writers for that film was not good, but I think the director was.
Right.
So I think, I think if the original director hadn't defected, I think it would have been a better film. And some of the other avenues of storytelling would have been either left open for someone else to use, because the comic books are endless. It's like you have multiple multiverses to deal with, and so many characters that you could have done origin stories with, which they've chosen not to do whatsoever, which I deeply regret. But yeah, there's so many things that they could have tweaked that would have made it a strong and entertaining film that didn't feel like the end of the trilogy.
And maybe I feel like Brett Ratner thought this was going to be the end of the series, but he left because there's a post-credit scene where Dr. Myra Myra's patient, the one that's brain dead, and you hear Professor X's voice come out of him. I honestly feel like Ratner was told this was the conclusion, and like you said, it was like a mix mash of three different, or you said two, but I'm just exaggerating, of several different visions and coming together. And it's like I said, for what X-Men is, he is the ideal director for a superhero film. He does these real flashy films with complex characters. And to me, this also goes to what I've always said was I've always felt X-Men should be on television, not in the movies, because they have so many characters. I mean, and we see this with the Deadpool films, right? They have a totally different cast of the X-Men who appear in the Deadpool films. They're totally, with the exception of Colossus, I don't think any of the characters from the original series ever make appearances in Deadpool. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why, and I even wrote a piece on this in my blog. You can go read it. Just search X-Men, it comes up. Where I make that contention, it should be a television, because if like someone, say the actor who plays Cyclops wants to leave, well, no worries, just bring in Havoc and you're good, But but anyway, that's always been what I've thought of the X-Men as far as that. Now, if you and I were executive producing this film, if you and I were doing X-Men Last Stand, Bryan Singer drops out, Matthew Vaughn drops out. You mentioned John Woo. Is there another director that maybe you thought would have been better at rounding out the trilogy of X-Men Last Stand?
I think even Kenneth Branagh would have done a good job. I think he would have done a much better job with. So yeah, with Kenneth Branagh, I feel like he would have better humanized some of the characters, because the first two films did so well. I think he would have done a good job regrounding them. And one of the biggest problems that I kept feeling is that Cyclops is such a weak character.
Yeah.
And I think growing him up to be a leader would have been better. But yeah, these are superhuman, extraordinary people, and I think the human aspect kind of got diminished with the other two films.
And that's a really good point. I think he would be perfect in to direct any sort of superhero film. He's such a I loved the Murder on the Orient Express. That's a fantastic film, which he also acted in. He played the detective Hercule. I didn't know he could act. I knew he was a good director. I didn't realize he was such a good actor. And then I found out he had smaller roles in a few movies I had seen. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. But
yeah, he's a Shakespearean actor. He did Hamlet. Like he gets it. And and he did the first Thor, correct?
yes, I believe so.
Yeah. So I think he understands epic with humanity, and I think someone like that would have been fantastic for Last Stand.
Now this is a part I think you and I probably both agree on a good deal more is the casting. I liked the casting. I liked they brought back all the original actors, which I thought was good. I even liked the new characters. I liked the actor they got to play Angel. I liked Kelsey Grammer as Beast. I was a little disappointed that Alan Cummings didn't return as Nightcrawler. I know it was because he hated the makeup in X2, and that's why he didn't want to come back. Like, dude. But anyway, but I do think the casting was really well done and really put together. What do you think?
Oh, yes, I still very much enjoy Famke Jensen as Jean Grey. I like James Marsden as Cyclops, which I still feel really bad for James, simply because I think he keeps getting cast as guys that that either don't really get the girl or does something really super cheesy, because now he's in the Sonic Hedgehog movie. So I kind of feel bad that he's not given stronger characters to play, which I think he has phenomenal potential, and I just don't think he's given projects. His agent needs to do better.
Right.
But I would have liked to see him be a lot stronger in that aspect. One of the things that also kind of rubbed me off about Last Stand is that you still have mutants that don't know how to control their power very well. So again with Cyclops, he still can't manage to control it, and neither can Rogue. Mm-hmm. And even Iceman and Rogue's character development is very, very weak. All you know is like they still haven't kissed for more than 3 minutes. But I think those weak parts of like the evolution doesn't really happen, and yeah, just I think everyone just gets watered down to the point that it's like, well, free for all, and not so fun.
And this is one thing I would fix with Rogue particularly is I think after a while her powers kind of feel more like a trope than a story, and you feel that with the Rogue cuts of X-Men Days of Future Past, which is good, but you're kind of like, oh, we've seen this before, you know? So I would have borrowed, and I hate to say this because, again, I don't like the Ultimate Comics, but one of the things they did was when they introduced Rogue, they kind of knew that would be a problem, and so they had her absorb, which I disagree with the mutant they picked, but they had her absorb Gambit's powers as he was dying, and so her powers just duplicated his, and she stopped being able to absorb other mutants. And I think at some point, now again, I wouldn't have used Gambit, but I think at some point, if you're going to make her a main character, you have to do something like that, because otherwise her constant, oh, who am I hear all these people in my head, it kind of, if you're not going to explore it, it becomes a trope.
Yeah.
And I mean that and then maybe after a movie or two where she has those powers, revert her back to originals and you can start all over again. It doesn't have to be permanent. But that's just my take. And one person we've both forgot to mention, Halle Berry as Storm. She is incredible as the character. Like you said, she kind of got a little bit of weak writing in the first two films, but she is just top notch as Storm. And I really feel bad saying that because the girl they picked to play her in X-Men Apocalypse isn't bad, but just compared to Halle Berry, I think she's just number one when it comes to that character. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I feel like you and I mostly agree most of the time. It's like it's usually the writers that are weak. It's not the actors that are bad.
Right.
When you give a seasoned actor good material, they'll give you good stuff.
Right.
And it's like if you give them terrible dialogue and underdevelopment, you're not going to get much out of them. Yeah, I like Halle Berry as Storm. I feel like they didn't really invest that much into her. Like, she kind of has a South African accent in the first film, but loses it, and then in the second film, it's not even there.
Right.
Which is just a mistake. It's an absolute mistake. And that's like, and then she ends up taking the post as Cyclops at the end of the film. I'm like, you didn't make her that strong of a leader in the first place. I don't know exactly what you're doing. So yeah, just lots of little disappointments that could have been correct.
And for this final segment, I want to know what you think about this, because I've thought about this as well. Okay, so X-Men Last Stand, or I guess technically Logan was the last movie of the original series with the original actors. I saw a YouTube video where this guy was trying to convince me that Logan is connected to the new series. I don't buy it. I think it is connected to Last Stand. I think it's supposed to be like they had defeated the Sentinels, not with the time travel and all this. That's why the X-Men are mostly dead. It's just Logan and Professor X, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, and then now they've concluded the main series with Dark Phoenix. The New Mutants, I guess, are officially now a part of the MCU. Disney has said that is the case now. Where do you think the X-Men universe goes from here, now that I guess the New Mutants are going to introduce mutants into the MCU? Are they going to pull this thing like what they did with X-Men Evolution, where they're saying everything's just been a secret all these years? Or do you think that they're going to try to maybe shoehorn in some retcons? What do you think?
They could shoe in some retcons. If they wanted to be really creative, they could actually use Doctor Strange in a new way.
That's true.
Because Doctor Strange, I mean, he knows everything already, so he's aware of them, and then again, we still have the intertwining of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver that they need to revisit.
Right.
So yeah, until the TV show Mutants becomes more well known, Doctor Strange would be the easier route for this. That's just perfectly in my opinion. You can disagree with me, totally fine. Free country. But in order for people to feel a connection there, and I kind of feel like they have lost the ability to try and use Black Widow as a connection to Wolverine in some way.
Right.
And I cannot think of another actor to insert as Wolverine other than Eastwood's son.
Scott Eastwood.
Scott Eastwood. It's like it's either him, someone that we kind of recognize that already has the look, that's kind of the B level, or pick someone who we have no idea who he is. It's like he shouldn't have that much of a resume, just already good at what he does.
Right.
But it's either Black Widow, and I mean, and Nick Fury should know at this point as well. So those are three ways or four ways you can weave into this. It's like you have Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, you have Nick Fury and Black Widow, and you have Doctor Strange. So and those are healthy avenues to use that I think would work well. And that is until the actors from the Mutant TV series becomes more popular, more well known.
And those are all good ideas. And one idea that I had read on Reddit was actually in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I believe season 3, when Daisy gets her abilities, her inhuman abilities. She's not a mutant, she's an inhuman. I'm just saying that because I don't want people to think that's what I'm saying. But there's a scene where Agent Simmons, she's talking with Coulson, and she says we need to think about splitting the list. We have, because there's Inhumans and then there's Enhanced, and she was using that to compare Daisy to Deathlock. And I thought, and so someone on Reddit said this is actually where they can put in mutants that maybe they just didn't have a name for them. And it would be kind of like they could kind of do the heroes thing where there's like a shadowy government. It can't be S.H.I.E.L.D. now because we all know S.H.I.E.L.D. is shut down. But there was like some shadowy government entity, maybe the Essex Corporation, that was trying to keep mutants under wraps. And I thought, oh, that's actually not a bad idea. And that way, that would explain more. Of course, now we don't know if Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is canon anymore. So definitely they definitely seemed in the last season to split off. So we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and see. But any final thoughts before we sign off?
Let's see. It's like if the executive producers hear us in the ether, please do some strong writing. Please, it's like don't do anything. Don't do anything that is politically correct, because that will be boring.
Right.
It will be boring. No one will want to see PC on a big screen. No one wants to see it. Yeah, it's like keep it human as much as you can when it comes to character development, because no one's going to be able to relate to it without it. But yeah, I think that's all I've got.
And that's all we have as well. Rosemary, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at RLYNND1. Every now and again, I'll have stuff come out on either Athens Now in Alabama, the Washington Examiner, or American Thinker.
All right. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at RealJacobAiry, and you can. I also have a review of X-Men: The Last Stand. You can go. I'm not going to rehash it because that's not what this is for. You can go find it on my website, so you can head over there. There'll be a link in the description. And of course, thank you so much for watching here on Studio Jake. I'll see you next time. We have a really great movie makeover masterpiece. You've made it to episode 7. I promise you the last 3 episodes, they're going to be amazing. So once again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.